The Browns get a massive, absolutely huge Week 5 win here against the Indianapolis Colts. One of the best defenses in football. A lot of places that I respect had them ranked number 1 unilaterally in both pass and run defense. So this was no joke of a team that you beat. Darius Leonard or no Darius Leonard, this team also was deep at linebacker. So this was a legitimate win for the Browns. And not only was it a legitimate win for the Browns, they won by multiple scores. So why does it feel like this team could have done so much better than they did on Sunday? Is that us just having too high expectations for this offense? Or is it what actually happened on the field? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick, if you're new here, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload a ton of content coming out during this NFL season. So make sure you lock it in here so you don't miss a single thing. So in football, there are a lot of things you can be. You can be flashy, you can be explosive, you can put a ton of points on the board. But what, in my opinion, separates contenders from pretenders are teams' abilities to finish. The Browns have proven they can finish, and that's very important. Week 2 against the Bengals, after the Baker Mayfield interception, the Bengals score, they pull within 5, it gets really close. The Browns have to answer here on the next drive, and what do? They run the ball down the field in 2 minutes and score. Week 3, the Browns go down in the third quarter after being up by multiple scores against Washington, and then they get 14 points off 2 turnovers and end up winning by multiple scores. Week 4, you're up 20-plus points against the Dallas Cowboys, and then in the third quarter, that lead shrinks to 3 points. All of a sudden, your back's against the wall. It's the fourth quarter, and then Odell Beckham gets that reverse scores, and the Browns win by multiple scores, and then boom. Week 5, you play 2 solid quarters of football. Then in the third quarter, you play bad on both sides of the ball. And all of a sudden, this game's a lot closer than it feels like it should have been after the second half. You're getting uncharacteristic drops by Jarvis Landry. Baker Mayfield has thrown 2 interceptions, and it looked like his shoulder just popped out of his entire body. It did not look good. And then boom, D'Ernest Johnson gets 26 yards on a run on 3rd and 9. And you win the game by multiple scores. This is a good team. This is a tough team. And records aside, I think this is going to be one of the most easy to love Browns teams or Cleveland teams in recent memory. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the specifics, and we're going to start with the defense. If we're going to talk about the defense, you have to start with MYLES GARRETT. Because MYLES GARRETT was playing really well before this game, but now he is playing at like unanimous defensive player of the year type levels if he keeps this up. He had 2 sacks and a forced safety. Myles apparently got tired of getting turnovers for the offense to capitalize and turn into points and decided, I'm just going to get points myself. So kudos to Myles. And also, let's talk about that contract Myles signed, because what gets overlooked with that contract is that, yes, it is big, but the second he signed it, it wasn't a market resetting deal. It was just along the lines of what Khalil Mack got, and then I believe Joey Bosa got his money, and he got actually more money than MYLES GARRETT. And for him to play at this level and to not be the highest paid player in the NFL and also to be under a 5-year deal is a tremendous win for this front office, because if MYLES GARRETT would be up for that contract after this year, the numbers would be astronomical, because like Myles is on a pace for 22 sacks right now through 5 games. Like, this is not a small sample size. This is really good for MYLES GARRETT. I think he himself, just by himself alone, had more pressures than the entire Colts offensive line gave up in the last 2 weeks combined. Like, this is how dominant of a game he played. Now, granted, Anthony Costanzo was not out there, the starting left tackle. He did go up against a backup left tackle. This is what you expect a top-tier, elite defensive player of the year type player to do against such competition. But that being said, we can't just take that away from him because of that. So Myles Garrett, yeah, he gets the game ball. He gets everything. He gets all the accolades. He played tremendous today. Now, speaking of people who did the opposite of playing tremendous, let's talk about the safeties, because Carl Joseph was not out there. Andrew Sadejo was, and Ronnie Harrison was in there in place of Carl Joseph. Now, Ronnie Harrison did not have a bad game. He was put in a lot of good positions where he could do what he can do well, and he played a decent game in lieu of Carl Joseph. I think he should get more playing time in that strong safety role, and then maybe you should consider playing Carl Joseph as an extra linebacker or something like that so you could split the field, have less space for Andrew Sadejo to cover, because, you know, Andrew Sadejo had one of those Andrew Sadejo games, right? Either he's like a second late because he's not fast enough to get there, or he's just completely in position and just misses and whiffs on making the play. And he just has a bad habit of always being in the picture frame when something bad happens to the defense. Like Sadejo's always there chasing whoever just got the ball. And they have to do something at this point. Now, they did do something with the safety position. I did see Sheldrick Redwine out there. I don't know who he was in for. I do believe he was in for Ronnie Harrison, and he did get an interception. Now, I would have to take a deeper look at the game footage to see how much of an impact he had, but if you can get more speed in that secondary and you're comfortable and you're more comfortable with Sheldrick playing that strong safety role than free safety, then that might have to be an option because you need more speed back there. And as much as I like Carl Joseph and as much as I like Ronnie Harrison, especially after that pick six where he did look fast, I'll give him that. But, you know, he was outrunning Phillip Rivers, so everybody looks fast when you're outrunning Phillip Rivers. But Ronnie's just not fast enough to be back there a lot when you don't have a particularly fast free safety. The same is looking like it's true for Carl Joseph at this point. So maybe if you put more speed back there with Sheldrick, it can change how this secondary covers and bring out the best out of both of those guys. I don't know. I'm desperate for a solution with the safeties because the Browns should also be desperate for a solution there. And I don't think there's going to be a trade scenario available where you're just going to be able to get a guy. And again, I know Earl Thomas is a popular name. I just don't know if the Browns, if that's the direction they want to go with it. But it's getting to a point to where, like, hey, you got to do something. Now, luckily, it hasn't cost the Browns a game, right? But it could in the future. And you don't want that game it costs you to be in the playoffs. So they need to figure something out to get that to be at least league average back there, because right now it's much, much below average. But again, you have to give credit where credit's due. Sheldrick Redwine and Ronnie Harrison, they made some big plays. They got the big interceptions. Now, on the one pick six with Ronnie Harrison, I'm glad he made the play. I'm glad he caught it, and I'm glad he made the pick six, and that is awesome. I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but also that interception is more of a result of a terrible decision by Phillip Rivers, because they were running a mesh concept. If you don't know what a mesh concept is, it's when you have two wide receivers cross each other underneath. It looks like that, and it's normally really shallow within the first 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So that's what they were running. The Browns were pretty obviously in a zone. I think they were doing like a cover two press. Phillip Rivers saw Ronnie Harrison standing there, like literally standing there, waiting for somebody to run into his zone in that shallow area, you know, between the sideline and the numbers. He was right there just waiting, and then he just threw it to him. And Ronnie Harrison jumped the route, made the play, did what he was coached to do, and ran that sucker back, because when you get an interception in that area, that's pick six all the time. I don't care who you are. That could have been Sheldon Richardson for all I would have cared. That was a pick six going the other way when somebody throws that type of interception. So great play by Ronnie Harrison. Good recognition. Way to stay disciplined in that zone. I hope to see more of him. Also, you have to acknowledge Phillip Rivers just made an awful decision there. He gave that ball away. In the defensive line, I have complained about this defensive line outside of Myles Garrett for a very long time. I think this is one of their better games. Olivier Vernon had a really good game today. I liked how he got back there. He was getting a ton of pressures. I don't think he finished on any sacks, but that's fine. Pressures work. Pressures are good. So I'm happy with that. Sheldon Richardson, also very good today. And given that they didn't have Larry Ogunjobi and they lost their rookie Elliott during the course of this game, I feel like they filled that role pretty decently. Obviously, you miss Ogunjobi in some areas, but, you know, you did fine without him. So defensively, hey, look, we know what the secondary is. We know what those issues are. And we know they're going to continue to exist. Dwayne Haskins had a halfway decent quarter of football against this secondary. It's not going to stop anybody. But the important thing with this defense is, can they get those plays? Can they get the occasional stops? And can they get the turnovers? They did that. So the Browns won this game. So you got to hand your hat off to the defense, because without their 9 points, you don't win this game, because you won this game, I believe, by 9 points. So that's the difference in the game. The defense made that difference in the game with a pick six and a safety courtesy of Myles Garrett and Ronnie Harrison. So you have to tip your hat to them. So the offense was a tale of two halves, right? If Baker Mayfield can find a way during the course of this season to put together 4 quarters that look like that first 2 quarters against Indy and against the competition that is Indy, man, you will have a license to get extremely excited about this football team. In the first half, Baker Mayfield went 19 of 28, 228 yards, 2 touchdowns, 116.4 passer rating. Understand that this is a defense that only gave up about 160 yards per game through the first 4 games of the season. Baker Mayfield had 228 in the first half. That's really impressive. I understand he missed some things early on in that game, and he definitely missed some things in the second half. But that first half is impressive, and hopefully as he gets comfortable, he can get more games that look like that first half. I also think one of the things that I'm going to put on the coaching staff is that I think they got too pass happy at the beginning of this game. I understand it was working. I understand Baker Mayfield was playing well, but with Baker Mayfield, you got to be mindful of the attempts. You got to be mindful of how often you're asking him to drop back and how big of a burden you're asking him to carry. I know the run game wasn't working as well as it did in Dallas, but I also don't feel like you gave the run game sufficient opportunities to prove itself in that first half. So I would have liked to see that attempt number for that first half be way down. I think you would have gotten more and better things out of Baker Mayfield if you would have put down the attempt numbers in that first half. But nonetheless, those are impressive numbers. Now, what he did in the second half was flat awful. I think he had like 82 yards for 2 interceptions. So flat awful in the second half. Now, I will give him this slack. Jarvis had 2 gigantic drops that I think changed the entire course of those drives and really killed the momentum of the team. But I also think there were a couple of drives where Baker Mayfield himself just killed the momentum. So Baker has to improve. He himself in the post-game conference said this was not one of his better games of football that he's played. He actually said it was his worst game that he's played out of the 5, but I think he's being a little bit too harsh when he says that, because I saw what he did against Baltimore, and this ain't nowhere near as bad as what he did in Baltimore. And then you had some nice contributions from some names that we haven't heard much from. Austin Hooper was good today. Rashard Higgins made a comeback today, got a touchdown, looked like his chemistry with Baker Mayfield was back. It's been on and off throughout the camp and throughout the beginning of this season. It's nice to see it when it's on. Hopefully that stays more consistent. Jarvis was really good in the first half, had some really head-scratching drops in the second half. Now, again, he's playing hurt. He was hurt before he came into this game. His hips obviously been bugging him for a while, and it looked like after he took that hit, something happened to him where he was kind of just thinking too much about the hip when he dropped those 2 huge receptions, which would have pushed the drive forward. So Jarvis, bad second half, good first half, really, really good first half. Odell made some big plays, made that big play on 4th down, had that tremendous catch. Odell, again, like he looked like in camp, like he's looked like this entire season, minus Baltimore, has looked like the Odell Beckham of old, and that's nice to see. And it's nice to have that versatility and that variety. I think all of that is key. And I will say this, as much as Baker Mayfield didn't match his second half with what he did in the first half. I don't think he had a terrible game today, and I actually do walk away from this game, despite the 2 interceptions, with more confidence that if the Browns are in a situation where Baker Mayfield is going to have to throw the ball more, that he can do that. I think it's all about Baker getting comfortable in this system. Now, when will that happen? Will that be week 8? Will it be next week? I don't know, but it looks like it's coming. Like, all the signs for somebody who's developing good in the system are there. It looks like it's on the horizon for Baker Mayfield. And I just have more confidence overall about Baker Mayfield's ability to win the Browns a game if he needs to than I did last week, despite, him throwing more interceptions than he did last week. I feel like he was asked to do more to win this game than he did last week. And he did deliver. Like, a lot of those points that he scored in the first half were the reason that the turnovers by the defense could be the difference in the game. So for the Browns, for Baker Mayfield, I would say that's a positive. I think he had proved he could be more competent, be more of a game changer in that first half against one of the best secondaries in football. And then in the second half, he had a bad half of football, but I don't think it's because they fooled him. I just think he just made a couple of mistakes. He got hit while he threw on one, and he just needs to get a little better, get more comfortable with the system. But once he does that, I think he'll be fine. Offensive line had themselves a really good day in pass protection. They had like hours to throw the ball there. They lost their best offensive lineman in Wyatt Teller. I think that definitely hurt the run game. It didn't seem like they could power guys as much, but also, DeForest Buckner was there in the middle. You didn't have your best interior offensive lineman. That's not going to be a good matchup. DeForest Buckner is the best interior defensive lineman. We'll see how they look like against teams like Pittsburgh and other teams down the line. And we'll also see how long Wyatt Teller is going to be out. He did not finish the game. I believe they cited a calf injury. Also, Jedrick Wills had a fine game. He got beat a couple of times, but other than those 2 times, he had a pretty fine game. He held up pretty well there. I'm confident in him going into Pittsburgh. So all in all, with the offense, I feel like they had themselves an up and down day. At times, they looked really good. They look like they can get this done through the air in ways that we did not think they could early in this season. And then on the other hand, they look like exactly what we were afraid of. Turnovers, missing opportunities, drop balls, all these things that kind of haunted 2019 came back and haunted the Browns a little bit in the second half. So things to work on, things to fix before next week. But all in all, you had a winning performance and you were able to do what you needed to do against the league's best defense. Now, there were a lot of injuries, and I think, we got to see what this injury report looks like on the next few days. But Cleveland, let's take a collective sigh of relief together, because we have ourselves a legitimately good football team. After this week, beating the Colts at home, finding a way to win, that's the truth. And you know what? After that week 1 loss, I went pretty hard on them, saying that they had to prove what kind of team they were going to be for the rest of the season with how they came out to perform against Cincinnati. And they came out guns blazing against Cincinnati, and they haven't looked back since. This is the first team in years that when something was thrown at them, they responded in the way that you would want a good football team to respond. Last year, when Tennessee beat them, how did they respond? They had a clunker of a game on Monday Night Football where they beat the Jets by 10 points, and then they all pat themselves on the back, and they thought they were the greatest team on earth, and then they got smoked week in and week out after that, and then they never recovered. This year, different. They beat the Bengals on Thursday night. That's cool. What's next? You beat Washington. That's cool. What's next? You beat the Cowboys. That's cool. What's next? You beat Indianapolis. That's cool. What's next? This is a team that responds. This is a team that is not wrapped up in the minutia and all the other garbage about themselves. This is a team that's not wrapped up in sports talk headlines and all that goofy stuff that 2019 was about, with the head coach and everybody else. This is a team that just wants to win games. That's all they want to do, and that's what they're doing, and they're successful at it. So you have to tip your hat to Kevin Stefanski, because we saw what this similar group of guys did last year, right? This is much different. And you know what the best thing about this team is right now? Is that I legitimately think they're still figuring things out. Like, I don't think this is the apex of what this offense specifically can do. I think this defense is going to make some strides in the secondary. I think a lot of it is still communication. So I think strides are going to be made there. But I think this offense can be so much better, so much more crisp, so much more versatile, so much more extravagant, so much more of a wide variety of looks that they can give teams. And I think that is the part that if you're not a Browns fan and you are a fan of another team, that should scare you. But that's my thoughts on this Browns Week 5 win. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.